Welcome to Chatting the Pictures. My name is Cara Finnegan, and I'm a writer, teacher, and historian of photography.
And I'm Michael Shaw. I'm a writer, a psychologist, and also a publisher of Reading the Pictures.
Science and technology has played a major role in the fight against the coronavirus. At the same time, what hasn't been as visible is the functions they play and the mechanisms behind them. These photos prove the exception.
This photograph was taken by Christopher Payne for The New Yorker. It's from an article at the end of November taken at a Corning factory in upstate New York that is running around the clock to make vials for the coronavirus vaccine. In this particular image, we're seeing machines called converters cut and shape tubes of proprietary Valor glass.
The New Yorker text that accompanied the images in the New Yorker magazine described Payne, the photographer, as having an architect's sensitivity to form. I think that's such a great description, and you really see that particularly in this first image, which to me is kind of this interesting combination of mad scientist warehouse sort of experimental space, and yet it also looks like a cathedral, doesn't it? It's got these wide vaulted ceilings. The big pipes extending from the ceiling almost look to me like organ pipes. And so it's this really interesting kind of industrial, but almost spiritual kind of context in which to present a really important story, which is, yes, we have a vaccine and we need to get a vaccine to people, but how do we make the containers to do that?
There are so many miraculous transformations and advances that are taking place in materials as well as medicine. And how do you represent that? I mean, you have these vials, you have these coatings where they can grind together without creating any kind of dust. They can withstand high and low temperatures, accommodating the Pfizer vaccine that needs to be stored at 90 degrees below zero. I mean, how do we wrap our heads around science these days is really a challenge. Other elements at play here, the color, and that particular orange is really amazing, where it represents actual fire in contrast to like the antiseptic quality of the rest of the space. It creates this warmth and vibrance in contrast to this cold and steely quality also.
Yeah, it almost has a kind of industrial age throwback feeling of, the forge, right? In the big factory in the 19th century. And yet here you have it in this very sanitized contemporary 21st context. This image of the two engineers essentially testing materials really highlights that. So in the earlier images, you have this kind of personless space where it just seems like it's all happening without human intervention. But here you literally have what look like mad scientists, right? I mean, it's like his arm has become the molten material pouring out of that container.
Yeah, it's interesting that the way that people think about science and technology is governed by science fiction and kind of fear of the robot mind taking over. It's funny that there's like a natural disposition to like care about these photographs because, it's the COVID vaccine to the rescue. But otherwise, you would see like the absence of human figures in two of the three images is something disconcerting.
This image also cued for me another kind of 19th century image. They appear almost to be on a stage, as if they're presenting their experiment or their materials to an audience in a darkened theater. And it reminded me of some of these famous paintings of medical experimentation, where doctors would essentially cut open the bodies of corpses and display them, for medical professionals to gather and see. And so it's almost like this kind of theater environment.
And then the third photograph is interesting too in that, again, it's all the machine show. Here, these robotic arms are transferring vials onto these plastic tracks, which move them into a chamber, which further clean them and dry them and spray coat them, as opposed to the real difficulties that we're seeing, just like the pure logistical challenge of distributing the vaccine and getting people vaccinated. It's just so amazing to see something like this level of order and complexity all happening at an automated level. It almost begs the question of, as opposed to can science save us, it's more that science has gotten way far ahead of us, that a vaccine like this can be produced in under a year. But then are we up to the challenge of taking advantage of it?
You're right. What happens after these vials are so carefully created and produced? Will they get to where they need to go? Will they be filled with what they need to be filled with? Will they be transported? There's so much capacity for human error. And, these arms are kind of perky and sunny, aren't they? They're bright, they're yellow, and they have these kind of, the long little fingers attached, which are moving those vials. They almost seem lifelike in a way that is linear and logical, but also kind of strangely reassuring. It's like they're hugging the future of the vaccine, wrapping their arms around what will hopefully be a technology that accomplishes what it's designed to.